I just looked up the energy social media.
Oh, there
bro,
it is, the energy social media.
Which was CLG. Obviously, they just like renamed it and they took over the brand. When they got eliminated, their final tweet was like, "That's the end of the road. Like, thank you to all the fans that came out, supported us that split." And for any team that has like a big fan base, that's gonna be like 10,000 likes, something like that. Got 307 likes. I could tweet a period and get more likes than that. Like that is like I'm gonna do it right now.
Hey, what's up, everyone? No LEC to start things off right after this, but that's what we're going to be talking about a lot of today in this week's episode of Power Spike, Dgon, Dom, and Monte here to break things down across the LoLEsports world. For those of you that saw the highlights, yes, thank you. I did promote to Plat. It was great. 3 years of being in the darkness. Dom, I already caveated it. I said, I know I still suck, but felt good. I'm still tired.
Is that why your hair is platinum colored now?
Yeah. I was like, hey, we're gonna keep it like not colored until we get it to platinum.
It's not silver, guys. It's platinum. His hair is platinum, not silver.
Why is the platinum rank green? I never understood that.
Because they probably couldn't figure out silver and platinum. I mean, is platinum like have that bluish green color?
No, this ring, my wedding ring is platinum. It is not green.
That's not silver?
It's platinum.
I'm missing something? I never even thought about that until now.
But yeah, lots of action from Europe, plus the MSI draw, and now the offseason moves starting to happen in the LCS. A bunch of things leaking out. So let's get to it right off the jump. Let's start with the MSI draw. So Mad Lions, great run. We'll get to it a little bit later. But the draw came up and, IWillDominate had one thing to say about the draw and how it happened from our boys from North America. Licorice is going to have a very fun time.
He's getting put in the bin. CLG. Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, more than he already was, I guess.
Yeah. But it looks like it'll be BLG, R7, Golden Guardians, and Gigabyte Marines. Levi just will not give it up. Still in Group A. Then the upside, G2, Loud, PSG, and Detonation Focus Me. When we break things down here, Dom, what do you see?
I mean, I just see that it's going to be extremely, extremely rough for the wildcard teams, which is, I guess, is the point that you're trying to get them out like as quick as possible now. Instead of having the previous format where there was like 8 best of ones where you had to watch OCE just get dicked 4 times by NA, 4 times by EU is just miserable to watch. They're trying to eliminate that and just have like, some quick side dick. You just slaying some dick on the side, just kill them off, and then you go into the real tournament quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, no, I can't really say anything. I just saw the celebrations with Gigabyte Marines. They have an influx of money from like energy ownership a little bit. There's like this North American Vietnamese group that have influxed money into Gigabyte Marines. They had a bus and they drove around Vietnam after the win, like almost like a champions parade and stuff. It looks pretty cool. So like,
their viewership is really huge. Vietnamese viewership in general is really big. Like, I don't know how many people watch LCK on YouTube, but the entire chat is in Vietnamese on YouTube for LCK on the English stream, by the way.
Oh,
so there is an enormous amount of interest in League of Legends in Vietnam, and they watch a bunch of other regions as well. I do find it interesting that, yes, they are owned by NRG Asia, which is a partnership between them and a Vietnamese company. I'm not sure how that works because how can they own 2 teams that could potentially compete against each other at international events? Remember, guys, when Riot said you couldn't own 2 teams, which is why they busted up all the sister teams in Korea. So riddle me this, Riot. What are you doing about that conflict of interest and ownership? Nothing? I bet nothing. You guys want to bet nothing?
I bet nothing.
I bet nothing as well.
I bet nothing. Hey, you're doing the thing in Vietnam. It's good. Their trophy looks really cool. And then Billy just has just a clean path to it, the opposite side. PSG, Detonation, Focus Me. PSG has made it there to the top. Detonation, Focus Me has been like the Giant Slayers. Loud has a very passionate fan base, but going up against a G2 squad who probably last week didn't expect to be here. Yeah.
It's the G2 conundrum. On any given day, they could both beat or lose to anybody. Now, clearly, they're not going to to lose out of this group. The real interesting conversation here is after G2 and BLG get out, remember that the second place team from each group plays each other. And at that point in time, we get the third seed into the 8-team bracket. So the real question is, does Golden Guardians lose to, first off, they could lose to the Vietnamese team, absolutely, before they even get to this point. But if they get to the second team, do they actually lose to like Loud or PSG? Real possibility. I
don't think they would lose to Loud, but PSG is a little bit scary. I think PSG is tough mainly because so the biggest strength of Golden Guardians is, in my opinion, their jungler River. I think River and Gory just kind of ran the league.
Jungia enthusiast, I know.
He is a Jungia enthusiast.
And I am a Jungia enthusiast. And Jungia just like completely just slapped the entire fucking league. Like he just ran PCS. I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, he just looks like he's going to go back to LPL sometime in the near future. So that I think is a little bit weird. That's a tough matchup because normally River is just able to like outpath and outclass his opponent. And I feel like Jungia is just a player that is actually really smart about his early pathing. If you followed Jungia's career when he was with EDG, essentially the way that he would work and the way he would trade off with JJ was that JJ would play more of like the control, like level 6 junglers. And then when you needed somebody to like come into the game and like outpath somebody in the first 3 levels and find timings and really just accelerate the pace of the game, which is similar to what River does for Golden Guardians, Jungia was the player that would come into EDG and play in those matches. So for example, last summer, there was a Poppy Trundle meta that came in. Like, Peanut was obviously really famous in this meta, and JJ was more of the guy that was better at Wukong, Vi, like hitting level 6 and then like really just affecting the map from there, and slightly better team fighter. And Jungia, when everyone was just playing the early game like Sejuani, Trundle, Poppy over and over again, Jungia was the guy that came in and he was actually able to elevate that team when they were struggling, and he was part of the reason that they were even able to get to the World Championship from EDG. So I feel like Jungia is actually really good, and that's a scary matchup just because Golden Guardians is not going to have the same amount of jungle diff as always. And if you don't have the jungle diff, what happens with the other like players on the team is their bot lane and their top lane going to be able to push through and outclass the opponents at a high enough degree to win a series when your best player is behind.
That'll be the question. And again, they'll have to do it twice in 2 different styles, right? If it gets to PSG later on, but before that, you got Levi, who we've known for the long time being a carry jungler. Will River be able to, I guess, outgank while Levi's just taking in all the resources and trying to carry the team forward? So, kind of a interesting thing here for Golden Guardians moving forward out of this play-in stage. Is it a failure if they don't make it out of the play-in stage, given BLG, G2, and then one of these wildcard regions? Is it a failure?
I mean, yes, like
massive failure.
For the second North American seed, like I get that Vietnam has been at least kind of mildly competitive. They were not participating in international events due to the pandemic for a long time.
Yep.
And certainly I would think they have underperformed expectations recently in the last couple of events they were on, but they've also shown that they can potentially take down some of the lower seeded North American teams, but they should absolutely not be able to take down the second seed from North America. Like usually we're talking about like the 3rd, 4th seeds from NA.
I mean, second seed from NA has so many advantages, like monetary advantages, coaching staff advantages. They play in a better league, so they get better quality like practice, better quality on stage. I know that people make the argument that PCS and VCS teams can scrim Chinese teams, but the top Chinese teams are not scrimming PCS and VCS teams. Like maybe you're getting like 16th, 17th place, like LPL teams playing a scrim versus PCS, which I don't know how much you're learning there.
You have to remember that these Chinese teams have the opportunity to scrim the best teams in Korea. And so they're not going to fill their scrim schedule with Vietnamese teams. Like that's not happening. So
yeah. So the argument that they have somehow a better environment just from being kind of like just being in Asia somehow makes them have a better environment than NA, it's just untrue, right? Like NA players have a lot of tools at their disposal, and they have like coaching staff advantage, way more resources. If you lose to a VCS or PCS team as NA second seed, it's a huge issue for the entire North American region. It just shows that despite still having resource advantage and having resource advantage for years at this point, you haven't been able to leverage it at all in order to improve. And I think that would be really damning evidence of the NA infrastructure not working and what things have and the things that have been set up here not being good. And the reason that I'm scared about this actually happening is because when you look at North American teams historically, they all kind of follow the same format. And Golden Guardians is essentially just another NA team when you have like 2 imports on the team where they're kind of like carrying, okay, they're performing well right now, but there's no like built-in synergy for years on this team. There's no like culture that has been, some Golden Guardians culture where you can see like people have, plugged into the team and they've improved together. When you look at a team like Cloud9, for example, you could see like, oh, this org is actually like moving forward in ways and they've actually elevated themselves over time. Golden Guardians has been bad for a while and now they just have like a good team right now. I don't necessarily mean that this team, or I don't necessarily think this team is cohesive and will have some type of advantage. So I think that this is it's a real test. I don't know. I don't know if I would bet on Golden Guardians beating PSG. I feel like PSG is actually just a better team.
I mean, look, there's also, this is going to sound weird. Like we all expect G2 to comfortably get out of this group. But one of the problems that G2 is going to face is a very tight turnaround after LEC ended. And yeah, because they were eliminated early, they're going to have more opportunities potentially to get comfortable on the new patch. But basically, because all of the other regions in the world, except for Vietnam, I think they ended last weekend as well. There's been like a multi-week break for a lot of these teams where they're able to scrim, especially the Asian teams have been scrimming this entire time on the 13.8 patch, which is going to be the one played at MSI. And G2 is going to have to turn around really quickly to learn this new patch. And they're going to, they weren't really probably able to scrim a lot of the other European teams who are still playing on the old patch as the playoffs dragged on this weekend. And you have to turn around really fast because MSI is starting literally like in a week from today as of the recording of this show. And you have to travel to London. You have to do all of the media shoots and everything, which take a day to get all the player photographs and all the assets, interviews, everything like that together. And then you're playing against other European teams who are also not really accustomed to this patch. And the Asian teams, as usual, are going to push as long as they're going to arrive as late as possible. So, they'll probably arrive later this week, I would imagine, to get over jet lag. But then they're going to have a turnaround where they're going to spend a day at the photo shoots. They're going to spend a day getting over jet lag. And because they already have practice on this patch, they're just going to be much better prepared coming into this event. And that'll include PSG.
So everything that we said about Golden Guardians and the North American infrastructure, if G2 lose, how much of that is transferable?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all of it. All of it. If G2 lose to PSG, then it's really scary.
I don't think
Europe.
that's going to happen. But I'm just saying that there is a systemic disadvantage that LEC created for themselves because they took a week off of competition for no reason in order to give
the
them
ERLs.
this Oh,
the
yeah.
ERL finals.
Super
they matter.
Important. Yeah, they really matter.
Well, I mean, it is their pipeline of talent to give them the showcase, and they have been the pipeline of talent of the West, much more so than here in North America. North America's trying, right? They had Proving Grounds finals, but
there's a fundamental difference between the way EU and NA have like been forced to cultivate their talent. It feels like NA is trying to cultivate talent now because they realized the importing didn't work. But because there was no money in Europe, that's why they cared so much about ERLs. Like the reason why ERLs and Challenger Series and why all these leagues popped off so hard and people cared so much about them and why so many players were brought in was because in Europe, they didn't have the ability to just buy 2 of like the best Korean players. So now there's like an issue where it's almost, people are seeing it as almost a bad thing within like the ERL ecosystem, the Europe ecosystem, that teams are going out and getting top tier imports, because one of the saving graces of EU is that they actually had to figure out ways to develop their own talent, which is, a lot more useful than having a mercenary come over for a year or 2 years and then, perform at a mediocre level. They don't even get comfortable in the environment and then you just send them back off to like Korea afterwards. So I feel like that's the difference. And I mean, NA, obviously you have the NA Challenger Series and stuff popping off now, like where people are actually more invested in it. And I think that it actually might be a good thing in the long run for North America if the money goes down and you actually have to develop some of these players, because just buying really good players, it just doesn't look like it's working.
But what if I told you that the mandatory academy rosters were being eliminated? How would you react to that possibility?
No, I've heard about that. So yeah, so apparently all the orgs, except for C9, I believe, C9 was the only organization that wanted to keep their academy team, but because of like issues within the like league with money and everything, teams have now voted to eliminate the academy rosters. I don't think that matters that much as long as you still have the academy rosters there. As long as the competition still exists, I don't give a fuck if it's Cloud9 Academy or CLG Academy or it's fucking Team Fish Taco or Supernova, wherever the fuck. As long as you have that second tier league where people are competing and there's a pool of players where you can dip into and they have like the ability to improve themselves and the ability to grow, I think that it still will function the same way.
I actually welcome it because then we can return to hilarious amateur team names. Somebody should take on the mantle of one of the greatest esports team names of all time, which was She Said She Was Level 18.
Yeah,
bring that one back.
God,
they
no,
qualified to LCS
please.
under that name, and then they had to change it.
What team was that?
It was like brunch. It was the one that was called like team, like the brunch club. It was the brunch, and then it became complexity once it came into LCS. They got a sponsor. Yeah, She Said She Was Level 18. That was the team name.
It's one of the greatest amateur esports name of all time, and we've had a few of those. Also, hilariously, the translation of Apto/Dopa, whatever you want to call him, the translation from Korean of his amateur team that was trying to qualify for OGN back in the day
was it called Dark?
It was, but before they were forced to change it, it was We Came to Slay the Peasants.
Team Dark was we came to slay the peasants.
Yeah, that's what it translated to from Korea. It was great.
Nice. I like that.
Well, with that,
so we get actually more entertaining names. And by the way, guys, cutting the academy rosters makes total sense because from the team owners' perspectives, they were paying these. First off, nothing is preventing the teams from having academy rosters. If they want to do that, they can still have it. And Cloud9 has majorly benefited because I think they've used their academy roster very well to do internal scrims and to, hide practice and be able to really cultivate a good practice environment. So Cloud9 may not even get rid of their academy roster. But secondly, one of the main problems is that because it's all based in California, they had to pay California cost of living, California payroll taxes. It was very, very expensive to the teams. If there's an opportunity for these teams to operate out of Las Vegas with their challenger rosters, they're still within driving distance and a short flight of LA should they need to come to the arena for Riot. But the cost of living is so much lower there that it really saves, like, no joke, like hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. And a lot of it was Riot's inflexibility about the academy teams that was causing these financial problems.
Yeah. I mean, also, I would say that the teams didn't. Cloud9 is an exception, but most teams did not make use of having an academy roster. Like the academy roster was essentially an independent project. You didn't have internal scrims frequently. The LCS staff was not interacting a ton with the academy players, so you weren't really benefiting a lot from just being part of an organization. Like I don't think Immortals Academy gets anything from being associated with Immortals. If it's another organization and the team is like invested and these players are able to have some level of buyouts so the teams can function and they have more interest in the players themselves. Like let's say instead of having a C9 organization where obviously all the most important players are going to be on the main team, if you have another organization like Supernova or Team Fish Taco and you're putting all your focus, all your energy into cultivating the best talent possible in your second tier division, I think that it actually will help the league in general. So even though it sounds bad that removing money is going to if NA did poorly with all the money that they had, what's going to happen when they have no money? I actually don't think that it's that big of an issue. I think that in terms of competition, I don't think we'd see significantly worse results just because you're going to have more North American players and less imports or less tier 1 imports. Because even like if you think about the quality of imports that have came into North America, a lot of the best imports were imports that didn't actually have like the insane reputation. Like somebody like Berserker, right? Like he's one of like the best imports that we've actually ever had in North America. Yeah. And it's not like he came with the fucking multi-million-dollar like S+ tier. Like he wasn't the prince that was coming over to NA. He was just a player where people were like, I guess he's good. He played on T1 Academy.
Right? Piglet, Bang, Crown.
Yeah, there's a lot of players that have not worked out
Looper.
With and then I mean look at some of the other players.
Looper
right?
was in NA. That's such a dark timeline.
Yeah. But some of like the most successful imports have been the ones that weren't supposed to be super, super insane. For example, Hui, he's literally one of the most successful imports of all time at this point.
True.
Did start out in Fnatic, but yeah.
No, Hui.
Hui, not Huni.
Oh, Hui. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So anyway, I also think that there's an opportunity here for businesses. Like you can run a sustainable business if you are confident in your player development, if you keep costs low and you sell buyouts to up and coming players to teams, right? Like if you were to run a team in Las Vegas or Kansas City, by the way, Kansas City has excellent internet. They've got Google Fiber everywhere. It's closer to the Chicago servers. Then if you are paying a very small amount, you could provide better living conditions for players because housing is cheaper. And, you just base your business off of a strong commitment to developing players because your entire business is making sure you sell players to LCS teams, right? So I think there's a possibility of that. There's ways you could structure the business, such as like, well, I pay my players less, but if I get a buyout, they get a percentage of their own buyout to incentivize them to play better.
Yeah. Well, there's two things. The first thing, and this kind of veers us off a little bit, but what Dom was saying about the academy teams not being utilized by the LCS teams, when I was over at Golden Guardians, there was a fear that if we missed doing scrims with the LCS teams, even though we were a bottom team, if we missed it, we would just be cut out from scrims totally, right? Because it was like this big lottery of like, hey, basically the top fish get to pick who the fuck they want to play first, and then it works their way down. So if we skipped like any of those scrim days, we're missing an opportunity to scrim against other LCS teams. And then the second half of that was like there was a stigma that the academy team was nowhere near as good as the LCS team, despite the fact that we were constantly in last place. So I think that's the thing that teams could control and be like, I don't care what you think. Play these guys and let's get the advantages of being an internal, like having an internal scrim. That was around the time that I'm not sure if you remember, Echo Fox was just doing the 10-man roster and only scrimmed internally. They didn't scrim outside of their academy team. It didn't go horribly at the jump. At the start, they had they came out of the lab with some weird things. Later on, it ended up catching up to the fact that, we got away from this because the quality of the player isn't as good and we will get punished by better players.
I feel like that's not a good argument though for improving. It's like we scripted our academy team and over time we just got worse. It's like, well, shit.
Yeah, but I'm saying you don't have to do
the NA experience though.
I'm just saying do 1 or 2 days. Have it be okay, Tuesday is internal scrim day and just make it like a big event thing. But teams don't want to do that. They would rather than create that and cultivate that foundation of competition within your organization, they would rather, scrim a middle of the pack team. And be like,
most players don't like scrimming against their academy team. Like the player themselves doesn't like it. They want to scrim against other players that are just better in lane than academy players. And that's the practice that players care about. They're like, who am I playing in lane? They don't care. Even though it's wrong, most players don't actually care that much about working together with your team later on in the game. Like they want to scrim to practice their lane matchups.
Thank you, Monty.
They want to scrim to practice their lane matchups, to play against another good player, to try out new champions in different lanes. Like that's what players actually want to do. So you always get pushback from players when you try to scrim your academy team because they would rather scrim against somebody they respect that they play against an LCS.
Well,
right. They don't respect their academy team, which is part of the issue.
I think part of that problem too is that I get the player perspective because there aren't good late game practice tools. Like we can't chrono break one situation over and over and over again in a late game macro. You can't just pause a game and then play out that scenario 3 different times with another team and say what are the things we could do? What's the most efficient way to do this? So in a way, I get it because practicing for those lane matchups and practicing early game is the best practice because we lack the ability to create drills for late game scenarios.
Right. And it's very hard to if you're versus a player that's worse than you in lane, it's very hard to force yourself into a late game scenario. Even if it's an internal scrim, it's okay, so you have all these opportunities to punish this player, but you just, every time you have a solo kill, just don't take the solo kill and just try to be even in lane. And then, we get into a fucking 20-minute team fight. Totally. And then somebody fucks up the 20-minute team fight anyway. You don't get good practice on it. It's just very hard to even make yourself even to try to create that situation yourself, even without the tools.
Yep. Totally agree.
Yeah. Again, I think the true solution to this is better practice tools. better practice tools, and then you can start getting a little bit more creative with it. Since we veered over here, let me just give a quick shout out to the 4 teams that did qualify back on up to the NACL for summer. It's AOE Gold, Team Tony Top, Supernova, who had a fantastic interview after their win back on up with Dragoon, and Maryville University, who have just been constantly the best collegiate team, the most consistent collegiate team. I guess there are other teams that have won. Winthrop is up there. They've won championships and can say we were the best this year, but Maryville is always up there. So shout out to Clerky and the pool of talent that he constantly pumps out. It's great. It's great. All right. So we veered way off of the MSI draw and what would happen. But again, the stakes are very high for the Western teams here. Make sure you get on through. There's a possibility they lose, and they're going to have a lot of shame throwing to walk through if they don't make it out. All right, next on up, for as much as news came out about Worlds this week, or I guess like last week, I think this might have been Saturday. Hey, Worlds is these dates. Get your flights ready. Good job, Riot. You got that schedule out. One thing that they didn't do great on, MSI still did not have times until literally
right now,
like 5 minutes ago, on
a week before
when matches are going to start, a week before the event. So you had no idea how to set your sleep schedule if you're trying to take off to watch it. Well, it was too bad until right now. So hopefully you have a flexible boss. That's going to be the topic of this week's Tough to Swallow.
All right. As Dgon said, really big props to Riot because they announced the MSI dates like quite a long time ago by their own standards, and having the Worlds dates is really excellent right now. We do know that Worlds has been delayed for the Asian Games, which also caused, as we know, a lot of scheduling snafus last year. So Worlds will be later. And Dom, luckily, it sounds like as of announcing these dates that you will get to sleep in until 7 a.m. For these MSI dates, starting
except for the dates that are 6 a.m. Yeah,
except for the dates that are 6. Still late for you, right? Still late for you.
Yeah,
he can go to bed at he can go to bed at 10 p.m. guys and not be completely wasted during the next day. But this is an issue that we've seen repeatedly with Riot, which is that the dates are super late to be announced, and the times are super late to announce. It makes it very difficult for fans to follow the events. And I think the most egregious part is that the LoLEsports website itself is like very infrequently updated with actual match start times, which means you need to use Fandom or Liquipedia in order to even figure out when the fuck games start, because there is no official Riot resource that gives you an accurate schedule. And frankly, like, it's embarrassing. A lot of the VODs are not put into LoLEsports as well, if you're looking for that. And it is astounding that they can run this massive esports scene where they expect people to follow all of these individual leagues from around the world, but not provide the actual information which allows fans to schedule their lives, to watch the matches that already happened, to know when things are live. And it frankly is just a terrible experience. So it really does need to be fixed. I think it would increase their viewership, not insubstantially, to have all of this information readily available or more available in advance, because up until this point in time, like, we didn't necessarily know when we would do this show, Power Spike, for example, because we typically do it after match days. As you guys are aware, we do it right after LEC. So how do we know when to schedule this content that you, the fans, enjoy, that helps people, guide people in their viewership? It's frustrating for absolutely everybody in the scene.
Yeah. Again, props to the fact that the dates came out early, but come on, we're almost there. How do you not know when the first match is going to start? Like, you know this out, or like roll it out in the first week. Maybe here's the first week of matches. Here's the start dates. We'll let you know the rest of it later. But the venue's locked in. What's the holdup? I think that's kind of how I feel about it. Dom?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, it's obviously extremely annoying as a content creator never knowing when matches are. Even like playoffs, like, you don't know when playoffs are. Like, you didn't know the times for playoffs, like in LPL or LCK, for example, until like after regular season already finished, where you already know what is happening, and the games are being held in like the studios. So why do you not just provide that information? LPL finals, no one knew when it started. How crazy is that? That no one knew, because
Dom didn't know. And he's a co-streamer for the league, an official co-streamer.
Because they have 2 times. They have wrong times. They have, like, on Google, it said 4 a.m., which is when all the other matches were. So if you get a time that's consistent with every other time that you've had, you're going to expect that that's going to be accurate. But it actually started, like, it was an arbitrary start time where it was after opening ceremony. So the opening ceremony started, and then it, like, ended at, like, 35, so it was like 3:35 instead of 4, which is when it was supposed to start. And then they just started the draft at like 3:35. So no one knew that. I talked to other co-streamers. Keijo didn't know that. He was messaging me. He's like, "Oh shit, bro! Like this shit started. Like get online." You know, Yamato did the same thing. Everyone's fucking hitting me up, but how does no one know about like times? Like it should be very easy to schedule times. I don't know. Like I can look. I never have this problem with other things. Like as soon as teams are decided for the NBA, you have the full fucking schedule. They'll tell you, oh, if Game 6 is needed, if Game 7 is needed, this is when the fucking games are going to be played. I don't understand why it's so hard for League of Legends. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and it makes even planning around, like for example, we don't necessarily even know dates for all of the league's playoffs heading into the next split. Like we don't even have start times for some of the leagues that are starting in summer, right? Dom, do you know when LPL is starting?
I have no idea when LPL is starting, but I know, like for example, I didn't even know when LPL was starting in spring until like a week before. Like the times that everyone said was that it was going to start like January 9th, but it actually started on, I believe, the 14th of January. So it's just very weird that you have to like, it feels like you have to jump through so many loopholes just to find a schedule. Like I mean,
usually I have to, by the way, to plan content, I have to ask the casters of those regions when the games are actually starting, because I don't, they know before the announcement, obviously, and I don't publicize that information, but it is decided.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have to do the same thing for LPL. I mean, the reason I didn't ask for finals is because it was listed as the same start time as every other start time. So if every game the entire year and the entire playoffs started at 4 a.m. my time, why would they randomly start the finals like 25 minutes before? Like it's such a random time.
I just think it's so outrageous because they could just put one PR person in control of all of these announcements and making sure that it goes out, and it would probably be like 1/4 of this person's job. It's not it's not exactly a heavy lift.
Yeah, I mean, also the problem is that like you said, the official site is the worst one. So you normally want to be using like Fandom or Liquipedia or Google. Like I use Google a lot of the time to find the names, but you definitely don't want to be using LoLEsports because they don't update it or there'll be wrong times, and it's just the worst way to actually find out when games are. So
yeah, shout outs to our free unpaid volunteer talent that update the Wikipedias that we utilize.
Well,
way more
as usual in League of
Legends,
Legends, the best content comes from the people that Riot doesn't pay. Shout out to Dom.
I kind of wonder why they don't set a time earlier, because part of me thinks this, right? The Riot way of thinking, it's, oh well, we're Riot, so therefore people will wait. We'll wait until we lock it down, and then it's 100% correct. But why don't they just do the opposite? Well, where, hey, we think it's going to be these times, but they're subject to change. And they can also do that as well to give us a heads up on when they think it's going to be, because I don't think the times of MSI were going to change based on who qualified, right? And if it was going to move like an hour or two, I think no one's going to hold it against them. We just wanted to know at what time of day were we going to wake up? I know, am I going to wake up in the morning, or do I have to like stay up late? Like, that's all I wanted to know. That's all I wanted to know. If it's like 100%. 8 p.m. or 10 p.m., I don't care.
I mean, we all know, I knew it was going to be roughly 7 a.m. So I can like predict when the start times are based on like what they normally try to do. So when there's a tournament in Europe, they try to hold it like either right at noon, right at noon, or like at 11 a.m. in Europe, because they want it to be watchable for Asian regions. So they always try to hold it a little bit earlier. Whereas if it's in like NA, for example, a lot of times they put it pretty late so that
it's morning in Asia. Yeah.
So it's morning in Asia. Exactly. So you start when you've watched enough like LoLEsports, you kind of can judge when it is, but just give me a time. Just give me a time so I know for sure, and I don't have to change my sleep schedule, because it's not that easy to follow a lot of these international tournaments when you live in North America. Like, it's part of the reason why there's been less North American interest. If you look at the times for things, it's always bad for North America. North Americans are always struggling with being able to watch the tournaments live. I mean, how many times did we have it in China? It's like China, Korea, in Europe, it's pretty hard to watch a lot of the times because it'll be like 6 a.m. my time. So it's 4 a.m. on the West Coast. It's just very difficult.
Yeah.
I keep thinking how fun it was. San Francisco felt like the center of the league world during Worlds. That was it. That was like the only time.
Honestly, like, I think the European schedule is the best schedule for all parties involved.
Yeah.
Because it being 7 or 8 a.m. on the East Coast, where 2/3 of the American population is, like, it's not terrible. It's not that bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. It's always best when it's in Europe. Like waking up at 6 or 7 is fucking child's play for me. When I spent the whole fucking LPL, like the first 3 months are the hardest part of my schedule because I'm waking up at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. is like the time where it just feels inhuman to me. 4 a.m. is more tolerable, but 3 a.m. is the one
It's
that
the
just
worst,
like
for sure.
It gets me. Like that's that shit where like 2 months in, I'm like, wow, I feel horrible. Like my internal clock, it just feels absolutely terrible. So
I mean, I will say that the worst events I worked with Riot were the ones where it was in Asia and they would fly me from Korea to North America to do the analyst desk. And we would literally do the analyst desk from midnight to 8 a.m., which was and we do this for like weeks at a time.
Yeah.
It fucking was horrible. It was the absolute worst.
That was my last experience before I left. It was the LPL, I guess the Chinese finals or Chinese Worlds over in, was it Beijing? Was that the stadium that it was in? Yeah, the Beijing stadium. We'd leave the Riot building and the sun was coming out. It was just the worst.
Yeah. Some entertaining aspects of it, like, Crepo and Quickshot and I would we get it back to our hotel at like 8 a.m. and there'd be the breakfast buffet, right? And so we go eat there and we just order like gin and tonics from the bar at 8 and because have a few drinks and then go to bed at like 11 a.m.
Having a sleep schedule for like a small amount of time, like a month, is not that bad in my experience. Like I don't mind just having a fucked up sleep schedule for a month. It's like kind of fun at the beginning too because you're up at weird hours and stuff. It's when it starts getting into like the 3-4 month territory that you start like hating yourself.
Yeah,
sure.
I can only imagine.
All right.
So yeah, please, Riot, can you please update? This is a very small ask. Can you please just give us the times that your games are going to be taking place in advance? Can you please update your own website with this information? Also with VODs, please. That would be helpful. And then also, can we know just about league schedules? Like, it's awesome that we have Worlds, but how can we have World schedule like dates, but we don't have summer split dates? How is that a thing that exists?
Yep. I guess we'll find out here in the future. All right.
I doubt we will. That's the problem. But anyway.
All right. Next up, we have our big talking point of, I guess, this past weekend. It's the certified banger of the week. What else would it be other than the LEC finals? Mad Lions versus BDS for the spring split title. Let's get into it. Got a 5-game banger, Dom. It was all 5. After it looked like it was going to be a 3-0 and, crowning was going to finally get crowned. I mean, they're up 2-0. They fought back twice. Yes, both
Mad
those games
Lions
were close,
could have won
2-0.
either of those first two games.
I agree, but they lost both those games. Wouldn't that make you worried?
That's the crucial part, is that even when Mad Lions was playing well for their standards, they were still losing the game, which made BDS look like such a better macro team. Because if you watch how BDS has been playing, they've been the team that's been winning every single Drake fight, every single Baron situation. Like, they have just been so much more stable at all these points that the only way you could really conceive of a Mad Lions victory would be them just rolling over them and just playing better in the early game. So when Mad Lions was winning the early games and still losing later on, I just thought that it was going to be 3-0. Like, it just felt like there was going to be no angle that Mad can win, because the winning early game doesn't matter. Mad Lions macro has always been some of like the worst parts of their gameplay. Like, they've always been really sketchy around mid to late game. Even if you look back to the G2 series that they played, not this one that they played, this split, but in Winter Split, the G2 series that they played in finals, it was the same type of thing where, like, when they got a huge lead in game 3, they still couldn't close out. So the fact that BDS was able to come back in those games made them look even stronger going into game 3.
I mean, I just get tilted sometimes frequently watching Mad Lions, because You look at some of these early game edges that they have, and they're playing, the way that Mad Lions basically got through these playoffs was they were playing a lot of either poke or pick compositions. And it's like, okay, we're going to play Niski on Ari or Gragas, and we're going to, take a Vi, and then we're going to take like a pick champ, like it's going to be Blitzcrank or Annie or Nautilus or Pike for Hylissang, right? And I think their power was really that Niski, Elyoya, and Hylissang were creating a lot of picks around the map and operating very well as a trio. But sometimes when they actually have to think about, instead of creating a play for a pick, they have to think about how to get an objective. They would just like try and ram themselves into the enemy with a poke comp. Like they wouldn't be there early enough on the objective, or they'd overplay it. Like they couldn't actually just gracefully give things up with a poke composition when they didn't have an opportunity to get priority on the objective. And it's like, you can just give up that dragon, guys. You don't have to take it.
I mean, I think that it's actually the opposite. For me, I think they need to be on the, like, if you're playing Zoe and you're playing Ezreal and these types of champions, I think you need to be on the objective early and you have to like win these poke wars.
Correct.
Or you just lose.
Saying. But I think if you have these early advantages, you don't necessarily need to opt into the dragon fight if you have a buffer of getting an early advantage.
I think the issue becomes if you don't like keep on snowballing your advantage, Zoe becomes nothing later on, and then Ezreal is going to eventually get outscaled in this game. So for me, I feel like you just need to run the game, or like there's going to be a point where they show up to the Drake with their fucking 6-item jinx, and he's just going to 1v5 the fight.
But if you don't have the priority, you can't try and just jam it down their throat. Like that's a faster way to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't run in and die, but I think that you do have to like try to regain space over the objective with your poke. Like you have to try to position yourselves in a way where you can work your way.
But they weren't doing that.
Objective.
They were like all inning at these objectives. Like it feels like they don't know how to play out these scenarios.
So I think the biggest issue is this. The reason why Mad Lions, so they still have the coordination issue where like Chasey is not always on the same page as everyone else. He had a really fucking good series, by the way. He put Adam in the fucking dumpster in this series. But if you look at like Chasey through the entirety of 2 splits of LEC now, he's still somebody who's kind of doing his own thing in the games. And then also Carzzy is just still an extremely unstable player. Obviously he won and he performed in these games. So people are going to, and I mean, he didn't even perform in all of these games. The Ezreal game, he like solo lost.
The Ezreal was like, what the fuck? Game 2.
He's really good at Ezreal though. Ezreal is like one of his best champions. It's just,
it's always been his signature pick.
He's just in that bucket of 80 carries that will get caught and lose you the game. Like, he's just one of those guys. Jackie Love is in that fucking bucket. Guma is in that bucket. Wild Turtle's in that bucket. Like he is not a precision 80 carry. He's not fucking Ruler who's going to just like never fucking get caught and lose you the game in big moments. Viper who's never going to get caught in the game and lose you it in big moments. Or if he does get caught, it's going to be like a coordinated attack that's based on positioning. It's not going to be, oh, Ezreal shifted forward into the whole enemy team on mid wave and the Malphite ulted, but he stopwatched it, but they have Jinx traps on him, so after a stopwatch, he's just dead anyway.
That was fun to watch, by the way, because it was after his flash got blown stupidly as well. Yeah. And it's like, my guy, I know you're playing Ezreal, but you're literally playing into Malphite, Maokai, Cassiopeia, Jinx, and Renata Glask. Like, your job here is to stay as far away from that fucking bullshit as possible and only use Arcane Shift to get out of the way of things, because if you use it to go in, they literally can just stun lock you until the end of time.
So there's games where you can like bait people on Ezreal and like you dying can be fine depending on your team comp. If you have like a fucking hyper carry Gwen or some shit where
you have a Zoe.
Yeah. If you have hyper carries where they have to commit into you, or if you have, for example, when I was on the stream, Jizuke was pointing out like Cassio. Like Cassio is enough of a huge threat where if the team suicides to try to kill the AD, Cassio will just kill everyone else. Like you'll be able to just clean up the whole fight. In this game, you are the fucking main character. If you die, you automatically lose.
Yep.
And even though they ended up losing this game off his play mid, even some of the plays that ended up working out were just like bad plays that he got lucky on. So for example, when he shifted forward in the dragon fight and Adam just expects, he's like, oh, this Ezreal shifted forward. Surely he's going to take a step backwards after he shifts forward. And Adam tries to Malphite ult like a little bit behind. He angles it a little bit behind where he thinks Carzzy is going to be. And then Carzzy just takes a step forward and he dodges Malphite ult, and then he's able to flash over the wall and bring the Maokai with him, and they somehow win that fight.
Right.
even though they win that situation, that is still a conceptually misplayed fight from the Ezreal. So it's always scary watching somebody like Carzzy in the team. But that being said, I mean
he also did die in that fight eventually. They did win it, but he did die, I think. Because he got hit by the Maokai W and then Maokai ult, right? Trying to remember.
I
it was
think he
by
lived.
the red buff. Oh, did he live? All right. Anyway, continue.
But I mean, I think the point I'm trying to make is that Mad, the way that they play, it's very anxiety producing. You don't feel like they're a very stable team. Like they're the team that could lose to anyone, you know? Like they are a team that has a very high ceiling, I would say, for an EU team, but a extremely low floor.
It's also that a lot of I think they played the meta well also. Like I think the meta suits them. Obviously, like having Niski on the Gragas was a huge part of their success. You know, having Carzzy on the Jinx and being able to get by on the Ezreal, which has long been his signature champion in these games, was obviously huge. But a lot of it too was Chasey putting Adam in the dumpster. And it was not only this series too. I mean, Chasey had a very good playoffs run on the whole. You got to see the caliber of his performance as well when they faced off against Vitality. He was just on another level compared to the EU tops he was facing against, and he played a lot of different diverse champions and forced a lot of bans and was still able to outperform the people he was laning against. So without that kind of gap, you really wonder how Mad Lions would do. Like if Chasey wasn't absolutely on form and with these massive, 2,000-3,000 gold leads, like do they win this series? And then when you think about this team going to MSI, is he going to get those huge leads? The answer is no against other Asian teams. So what does this team look like then is the next question.
I mean, LEC trying to make plays around the map and not having any lanes to do it through. That's what I think. I think LEC was probably the second MVP vote right there. I think he played really well. Going back to the Carzzy point, I guess none of you guys filled out that Carzzy apology form that was going around on Twitter. Did anyone see that?
No. Well, the thing is, like,
it was like the checklist on like a bunch of the different reasons why. It was a good meme. But I was like, we're not doing that one.
I think Carzzy, like he's kind of like a clutch performer where I feel like he can play well in big moments, but he's just an AD carry that I just don't trust. I just don't fundamentally trust him with leads.
Here's how to conceptualize this. So as Dom was saying earlier, like, Carzzy is a lot of the time the weight is really put on his performance because of the way that Niski plays. That's just who Niski is, right? He's a setup player out of the mid lane, and he's a low economy mid laner. And so when you have that, you can't necessarily have a guy at AD carry, even if he performs well a lot of the time, which he did during these playoffs, because the odds of him throwing the game become much higher if he's not the ruler type player, right? And then it becomes even higher if you think, well, maybe Chasey won't have these performances against Korean and Chinese top laners, which then puts more of the carry emphasis on Carzzy in the end. And so will he just arbitrarily throw a game at times? And hey, man, Jackie Love won a world's title. It's not saying that if you hit the right streak, you can't do it. But it's like, if you flip a coin enough
Guma
times...
won a world title last year, too. Oh, he did. Oh, shit, I forgot. That was... my bad. It's just when you choke like 5 finals in a row, it's just very hard to remember which ones like they actually ended up...
It's gonna say, Deft won and not Guma. Maybe there's something to that. It's just about consistency, right? And sometimes these players can win titles, as we just saw, because they're still good players. It's just that maybe you didn't, if you have let's say you have a 6-sided die, and a 1 or a 2 is them just inting a game, but you only roll 3 through 6, then you're okay, right? You're okay, but the risk is still there.
Yeah. I don't know. There's definitely levels to like the inting AD carry. I mean, somebody who's like kind of, so you have like the AD carries that are safe and consistent, and then you have the AD carries that are like aggressive but unstable, and then you have like in the middle where you have the Gonzales of the world. And that's my fucking type of AD carry right there, where they are super aggressive, but most of the time it works out. Like their die only has the one is the only one that will actually fuck them on the die. So I just think that there's
they're more like a D10 where they have a 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For sure.
I
mean, on the BDS side, I think that there's.
What I was gonna say.
So the BDS side, here's something that I thought about, because BDS has some of the most limited champion pools that you will ever see. And I thought about power picks in the meta.
When Cassiopeia is banned, what happens?
Well, this is something that's crazy. When you look at BDS, they were able to somehow be one game away from winning an LEC championship without playing any of these meta picks. So I'm going to I made a list here
interesting. All right,
of picks that they can't play that are extremely meta and absurdly OP right now. Number 1 is Annie. They can't play Annie. They can't play it mid. Annie is mega broken.
She's incredibly good. How hard is it to fucking play Annie? That is outrageous.
Well, I think it's just the way the team functions. Like they are the opposite of Bad Lions, where they don't play with the setup mid laner. So you can play Annie support.
Well, I mean, even on support though. Like
but that's the thing is like Annie. Half the value of Annie is that it's a flex, and they only can play support. They can't play it mid, so they refuse to play Annie. The other one is Gragas. They can't play Gragas. They can't flex it between no one can play Gragas. That's fucking insane. Because normally you'll have like one guy that can play Gragas at least on the team. Yes. So for example, Gen G, they will never play Gragas mid, but Doran can play it top.
Yeah. You know, Peanut can probably also play it in the jungle for being
maybe, but he hasn't been playing it. Like, but the point is that if you look at other teams, they'll either have a Gragas mid player or a Gragas top player. Mad Lions, they can't fucking play it top. We saw that this weekend, but they can play it mid every single game. You know, you have other teams like, for example, JDG, they could flex it into jungle. Kanavi's one of the best Gragas players. And obviously 369 plays as well. That's just a core pick that they can't play. So that's already 2 champions. Third one, Jace. They can't play Jace mid. They can't play Jace top. They don't. There's another one that I forgot about. Here's another one, Maokai. They don't play Maokai really. Like they can play it, but they don't play enough things with Maokai where they can make it an OP Maokai. They can't play the Jace Maokai combo essentially. So that's like a fringe one. That's like a Maokai with Jace. Here's another one, Kennen. They can't play Kennen top. So they can't play Jace top. They can't play Kennen top. Next one.
But here's the thing. They can't play high economy top laners because of their style. Like if you notice what happens. So first off,
no, they can't play high economy top laners because Adam can't play high economy because he can't play those champions.
No. Listen to me. The entire premise of the way that BDS plays the game is based around Adam being low economy. So like we can say that Adam can't play these champions, and that can be true. But the way that they play would be entirely disrupted by funneling resources into Adam. Adam is a super low. Here's how they play. They pick Darius or they pick Olaf. They bully lane to draw the jungler up there in the early game so that they can start dragon stacking. Then they funnel resources into Nuke and Crowny, and then they start to have, by the time you get to 3rd or 4th Drake, you have to fight them there with some Fed 80 carries, or a Fed 80 carry or Fed mid on these scaling picks. And by that time, it doesn't matter what Adam is doing in a team fight, as long as, or they set him up by like having a Maokai pick in the jungle so the Darius can close the gap. They set him up with some hard CC so that he can actually maybe do something in team fights. Or what they do is they play him on Malphite or Scion and ignore him all in on the bottom side of the map. And then he still provides some CC utility in the late game, but he gets no resources. So they do it one of 2 ways, but that is the fundamental underpinning of BDS's style.
I mean, I think that it's a little bit cope to be like, oh, it's because BDS plays that, like they play that style because Adam can't play with resources, because he's not a consistent player. Because Adam doesn't know how to play the game. He knows how to play a couple champions, but he doesn't know how to play the game. If you look at some of the things Adam does, he has some of the most egregious decisions you'll ever see out of a top laner. The TP mid with Malphite in game 5, where his wave is frozen.
Yeah, that was terrible. And he was level 5.
He just walks around the map and then he goes down like 120 CS. That is just a game losing decision, by the way.
He TP'd to go for a dragon at level 5. I mean, on Malphite, which it was horrible.
But the reason why he does it's such fucking basic reasons why he does this. So what happens here is that his wave is freezing away from him. Number 1, he went a setup that's terrible. He went Comet into Cassante. He went Comet fucking Doran's Ring Malphite into Cassante. Doesn't even make sense off the rip, but it's okay. Let's talk about why he decided to do this. The wave is being frozen against him by the Cassante, and he's like, oh, my wave is frozen. I can't go back top. So instead of like calling for a push out or going back top and like try to work the wave in, or even dying to get the push out, because if you're giving up 120 CS, that's a lot worse than giving up just 1 death to make sure that you get like a wave crashed, right? instead of making any of those decisions, it's literally like my wave is frozen. I can't go top, so I'm just walking around the map. That's literally the reasoning. There's no other reasoning besides for that.
Also, by the way, even like, I think one of the matchups that I'm sad we didn't get to see later on in the draft was like, because Vitality like lost to BDS, but I actually think that Vitality's strategy of doing like the Shanji style Rumble pick with Ignite would have been that maybe this team on a rematch with BDS could have actually abused Adam by using this pick.
He is such a bad Rumble player. Going from fucking watching Shanji play to watching Photon play Rumble.
I'm just saying strategically, I think that may have actually worked against BDS.
Sure.
Had we seen that in the first matchup between Vitality and BDS.
Yeah, Dom really wants to do his list. Keep going, Dom.
All right, continue.
Okay, so next one is Rakan. They ban Rakan on both sides, and you think that Rakan would, you'll be like, oh, this is what an idiot fan would say. What do you mean? I've seen Lebrov play Rakan before. Doesn't fucking matter if he plays it before. Right now, they don't play it or they don't value it as high as other teams. They can't first pick Rakan and win the game. They have to ban it on both sides. They don't play the lanes with Rakan. They don't want to go Xayah Rakan, and that's partly because of how the team functions. If Crownie is not on a hyper carry, the team is going to fucking lose. He's going to have to clean up a lot of these fucking team fights, so they refuse to play Rakan right now. Even if Lebrov plays it, the team does not play it right now. They've shown that they do not want to play Rakan at all in the series. Next one, Ahri. They don't play Ahri. So even though they first pick Vi all the time, they actually don't even play good Vi comps. They're not even playing the pick comps with Vi. They're just playing Cassio, and then Cassio gets a triple kill like every game randomly.
They play Cassio into bad matchups too. So
yeah, sure. But I mean, the point is that they don't actually play Ahri, which is one of the power picks right now. You go around the world, you look at the best teams in the world. What does fucking Knight play? What does Chovy play? Faker plays, even though he ran it down in game 4 and choked away that game. He did play Ahri, like he is an Ahri player. Ahri is a key pick for all these players around the world. And the last pick that I have here is Cassante. Like, they tried to play it, but it's not a Cassante. It doesn't look like another person's Cassante. They tried to play it. I still don't believe they play Cassante.
It's not a human Cassante.
It's not a Cassante that you'd see from... It was like a Doran Cassante from game 4 where he gets solo killed by the Scion in lane. That's the type of Cassante we're dealing with here. And I could probably fit more champions into this list, but that's 8 meta picks that they can't play. How fucking insane is it that they were able to almost win LEC without being able to play 8 of the strongest champions in the entire game? If you look at other regions, like these are champions that have to be banned or first picked. This is the whole game that people are doing. It's like, okay, well, you get Jace Maokai, but we get like Ahri Vi, and we can actually attack the Jace at points of the game, but you out team fight. Oh, but like, you know, you guys have a comp with some range, but we have the Gragas to try to initiate on you. There's so many different aspects. Like Rakan is obviously first pick because you can't give Xayah Rakan. So if you pick Rakan first pick, then they have to pick Xayah, or you just lose the game if the team gets Xayah Rakan. But then if they take Xayah, then you could get a scaling AD carry. You potentially get a matchup that's good into the enemy AD. This is the game that everyone else is playing around the world. They're focusing on these picks and how you trade them all off. BDS can't do any of that. They just have to play their own game every single time. So the fact that they were able to get this far is super fucking impressive.
Well, it's also that, you know, if you play a more Genji style against BDS where you're willing to just part with the first couple of Drakes on the bottom side of the map and trade for getting really solid cross-map advantages, which is what kind of happened between Chasey and Adam the longer this series went on. And then you're able to just like say, okay, as long as we don't feed these hyper carries on the bot side of the map, just let them have what the fuck they want. Like, we're going to get substantial gold advantages in the top side. We're going to play for Herald. We're going to play for plates, and we're going to play for towers, and we're going to dive the top lane or whatever. You can just come to team fights later in the game, and as long as their carries aren't giga fed, I think part of the problem is that teams were opting into the BDS experience in bot lane, losing these skirmishes, feeding, as you said, Dom, like the Cassiopeia and the Zeri or the Jinx, like 2 or 3 kills in the early game. It's just like, don't take those fights. You don't have to take them. It's not mandatory.
BDS is a team that only plays on 2 lanes. If you look at their like mid to late game, they almost never are playing on 3 lanes, which means that like, so what essentially that means is that they're giving up 1 lane of resources to have stronger control on like the side of the map that they want to play on. So they'll be playing on like mid top, setting up a Baron, and they will never send like Adam bot, and he's going to be pushing out waves. And part of the reason why they started doing this is because of Adam's summoner selection, because their main 2 champions were Olaf and Darius. So they never played with a TP on their top laner. If you're not playing with the TP, you can't play on all 3 lanes because he can't actually join the fight at any point. But I think that this is also more of like Adam not understanding how to play on like 3 lanes, like when to push and move versus like when to like sit around and TP. So I mean, they're essentially giving up a lane of resources the entire game in the mid game. And if you can't punish this, if you're not able to like split push and punish this, they're just going to end up winning.
Yeah, and that's why I think, you know, the nightmare scenario for BDS would be playing a team like Gen G. Like, that is a terrible matchup for BDS. And you know, even if we go back, like the thing is, to your point about pick Stom, is that it also just shoehorns them into very specific compositions. So when they have a Darius, for example, if we go back to their 3-0 against Vitality, the 2 games they had the Darius, they were playing Maokai, Orianna, and Thresh. Because you need this much setup for the Darius to be able to play against highly mobile compositions in the late game. Like, you have to be able to get the ball on him and speed him up, or get a hook, or get a Maokai ult or a Maokai W, so he's not entirely fucking useless in 5v5s in the late game. So, you know, they kind of back themselves into this position, and they have a specific playstyle, and it has worked for them. But there were going to be a lot of questions, as we noted previously, about how this works on the international stage, where this can be picked apart. And because of the way they play, it forces them into a bunch of other picks that are not necessarily the biggest meta picks. And it shifts their priority into, like, you know, first picking, you know, early picking Jinx, for example, which is weird.
I mean, they have to.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying it's weird. It's not normal in the meta.
The thing that's interesting about the way that they have to play is the advantage that they have as a team is that the 3 hypercarry ADs that people are playing are Jinx, Zeri, and then Aphelios. But most teams in the EU don't like playing the Aphelios. Like, they just lose when they play Aphelios into Jinx. Like, they're not able to actually get a significant advantage and be able to leverage it. But BDS can actually play the Aphelios, so it always gives them an advantage when the top 3 AD carries are up. That's why one of the biggest mistakes I think they made in this series was banning the Jinx game 4 when they were on blue side. I think they should have left the Jinx up in this game so they could trade off hyper carries, because the enemy team has to ban Zeri because you don't trust Karzi Zeri like later on in the game. And if you ban more of the hyper carries, you're leading into the Karzi strategy where Karzi just gets to play something like Ezreal. Like, he wants to play these like B tier AD carries and just exist in the game that he feels really comfortable on. He doesn't want to have to play like if you put Karzi in a game and he's having to play like Jinx Thresh versus Zeri Lulu, that's not his setup. He doesn't want to play with those. He wants to play Ezreal, where he can kind of do his own thing, and Hilly can play whatever the fuck he wants. Hilly's playing Rel or Pyke or whatever, and Karzi is just doing his own thing and playing his own game. He doesn't want to have all the resources on him. He doesn't want to have a bunch of spells to deal with and be the focal point of everything, because he's just not stable in that environment. So I think that was a huge issue during the series, was that Jinx banned game 4 because they kind of fucked themselves with it.
All right, we have dove a ton into our certified banger this week. And all the things that we've talked about are on display. So make sure to go ahead and check it out. The best of 5.
It was a good series, though, by the way. I did actually enjoy watching this.
Yeah, it was fun.
I thought it was a pretty fun series to watch, and like pretty good.
Yeah. It was also
the last 2 games kind of were disappointing because like BDS the last fucking shit stomped.
Yeah, last game was very terrible, but
it was also again,
for me, I enjoyed watching the evolution of the pick and ban over the series. Like, I enjoyed seeing both teams' styles. I didn't think it was like, to say nice things about Mad Lions. Part of why we didn't like them was because they would make a nice play and then immediately make a terrible play right afterwards, and they were making fewer terrible plays.
They did do it in games 1 and 2. They did do it. That's exactly what they did at the Drake Pit. But again, just congratulations to Mad Lions, the Mad Lions fans, all that stuff. Again, they did it the hard way. They could have qualified for MSI, dropping the game against G2. Elyoya said in that now a highly, shared interview, we don't want to get there off championship points. We want to go as the best team. And, people might have thought they were crazy when it was all, the path was there, but they forged their own path forward. So congratulations to Mad Lions, adding another star to their Lions. Make sure to use the Glad Lions. Did you see that? I made a Glad Lions, put a smiley face on there.
It was great. I did enjoy that. I did see it. Also, I love how NA and European teams, they add stars for domestic championships. Meanwhile, T1 just has them for world championships. So,
all right.
Yeah. That's why it hasn't changed in the last 6 years, It's that same amount of stars.
All right.
It's good.
Well,
It's good because costs are affecting esports, so you don't have to make a bunch of like new jerseys and apparel every single time you enter a world championship. Just keep the stars forever. Perfect.
all right. Well, some of you in the chat are saying, "Hey, have they talked about G2 Vitality?" No, but now is that time. It's our Galaxy Brain Club chat on specifically Vitality, the super team that was set up for success. You had playoffs there. They dropped that game against BDS. They're like, okay, it's fine. They'll bounce back against G2 in the lower bracket finals. Not the case. So let's get into it. It's Vitality, the topic of our Galaxy Brain Club. We went from the Bo show to oh no, Bo. There's a whole bunch of other rhyming things that we could do here for what happened to Vitality in this series. Yet another split that they're set up for success. It's not given that it was, a foregone conclusion, but they're set up and
it's their best split ever, and it still feels like absolute dog shit.
Why can't we just have the Bo owner matchup that we all deserve? That's my question. The greatest tragedy is no Bo versus owner. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, a caster flub, a Freudian slip waiting to happen over at MSI or something. But not the case here, Dom.
Hey, at least it's better than Team Nigma over in Dota 2. That one was, it got everyone, man.
That gets you 10 out of 10 times as a caster just accidentally.
Yeah. Forgivable. I guess they're both forgivable if you just accidentally say boner.
No, the best was the caster that was like, I don't know how you could ever make that mistake. And then he just like made that mistake. He's like, if you make that mistake, it means that you just must have that word in your vocabulary and you're a racist. It's like, or you just like mispronounce something every now and then he just fucking like, he just messed it up himself. That was just too good.
Yeah.
All right. Vitality. They drop the series. They're out. Yeah, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. I know you hate golf analogies, man, but I'm going to use one because I just played with Jat the other day. I had a good bogey. He had a terrible par. And that's what it feels like for Vitality. They had a good split, but it still feels like they failed everything.
Yeah.
Why, Dom?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what I've started viewing them as. They're just a North American team. If you view Vitality as an organization as like FlyQuest, like they're essentially FlyQuest from North America this year, right? Same type of thing. They have like the really fucking hyped up imports. They, just always look a little bit worse. It looks like there's no coordination. Doesn't look like they get any better from like their time scrimming. It's just the same. It's the story that we've seen ever since like my fucking TL in season 5. Is it just the same thing where you have like the hyped up imports, you have the team never looking cohesive. It just is that same fucking import team that we've always seen in North America. And if for some reason it just never fucking works. And obviously you can't really know why all the players are playing so much worse. But they are like the players like obviously Bo had an egregious game 1. He had a terrible game 1. Perks also had a bad game 1, but I mean, the way that he played poorly was he was not like buffering his ult and he ended up getting fucked, but that's because of the fact that Bo put them so far behind in the early game. And then like Photon, I don't know what happened to Photon. He was like the best top laner by far in Europe. And then he had pretty bad playoffs. He was bad in almost every single game in all of playoffs.
Not been good. It might have been nerves or something too. Like who knows?
I mean, it's just tough. So like they just trade off inting. They all look worse when it matters. Perks gets the most flame, but a lot of times he can't even play the game. Like if you look at the game, somehow his bot is losing like even matchups, and then Hilly's just roaming on mid permanently. Like Hilly's there fucking level 2, he's there level 4.
Hilly had a very good playoffs though overall. I mean, he did.
Yeah, I mean
he did
Hilly
well throughout the entire playoffs.
Yeah, Hilly just fucking I don't know. He's got mental edge on everyone. That's what it looks like. He looks like the guy that just has mental edge. Like
I mean, this was his 10th LEC final that he has participated in. I mean, the guy's a super veteran at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, he just is in everyone's fucking head, and he's just running the game. But you look at these games and it's everyone is just playing worse, and you don't know what the reason is for it, because the thing that's interesting is I was like, oh, I wonder if they're losing a bunch of scrims. So I started asking. No, apparently they're fucking like they're really good at scrims. Like they would lose to G2, but like everyone else, they would just like beat their ass, and then they go on stage and just get absolutely clapped. And the thing that makes this feel like more of a choke versus Mad Lions is the fact that they hadn't lost a game to Mad Lions in the winter split, right? or the summer or the spring split, and then they just played a best of 3 against them, and it kind of felt the same way that this best of 5 felt for Mad Lions, where even though it was like even though I guess there was some close games and Vitality technically lost like 3-1, it felt like Vitality would never win this series, and that's kind of how Mad Lions had felt versus Vitality on the other side of things up until this match. So it's very weird to see like how they completely mental boomed and choked. But when I see them, the thing that's weird is that they never end up recovering at all from when they have like a bad game. They have like one bad game versus BDS, and then they just look like a completely different team afterwards. As soon as things start going bad for Vitality, it just snowballs and they become shit.
I wonder how much that's the language barrier and the cultural barrier.
I think to your point, Dgon, I think one of the most, so there's two things I find extremely frustrating, and one of them is we were willing to give them a pass in their first best of 3 against, or best of 5 against BDS, because it was like all the players had like their worst days ever at the same time. And the question becomes like, well, what happens if they all have their best days ever at the same time? Like, what does this team look like? It felt like it was a one-off on the day. But one of my issues with the Vitality is it reminds me a lot of Team Liquid last year, where they can play so many different styles that they end up just not being good at any of them collectively as a team. Like we go from 1 week versus BDS with, the action top lane, right? And the very next week, it's like, oh, we're playing Flash Ignite Rumble in the top lane, or we're varying our strategies to such a different degree that the players are all such veterans outside of Photon, I guess, that they've been able.
Bo's not really.
Sure, that's true. Yeah, Bo's not really a veteran either. But Perks, Upset, and Kaiser have been around for a very long time, and it feels like almost they know how to run all these different compositions. But one of the problems can be is that when the two other players who are the newer players on your team, it requires great shifts in strategy and potentially very complex communication in game, which obviously we know players like especially Perks are used to, because he was the core of the G2 roster that was incredibly adaptive strategically in games at its peak. Like the genius of old G2 was that they could be in completely unique game states that were very weird, and they would make very good calls from those game states. And Vitality seems that they have the right idea sometimes, but like the timing is just like slightly off, or the execution is just a little bit weird, that ends up digging themselves, instead of getting an advantage, it digs themselves into like losing skirmishes. Or they can't communicate effectively which summoners are up, or these types of things that I think that when the two players that are the most novice on your roster speak different languages from each other and also from the rest of the team, that maybe you can't play some of the strats that you really want to play that are more complex. And it seems like that's what they've been trying to do, and it sucks.
I mean, I think one of the things that's so funny about this team is one of the things that you'd always have criticized by fans was that upset teams always play through upset. And I feel like this is the time where they should have been playing through upset. Like this is where you play through upset. No, like you have you have a hyper carry meta, so it's not like a utility focused bot lane meta where it doesn't really make sense to be playing through him. This is a meta that is focused on having hyper carries like Zeri, Jinx, Aphelios, and you had no direction in the games. Like it feels like everyone's just doing their own thing. So why not just have this be the time where you just play through upset and see how far you can carry you? Similarly to how BDS play through Crowny. BDS always play through Crowny. Just be BDS. Just be the same fucking team.
Yep.
But better, theoretically. I go back to just that. I think it was the final play, one of the final plays in game number 4, where Upset had a bajillion chakrams stacked up in front of the Baron pit and just stepped into range of Niski, got stunned, and that was basically it. That was, I think, it was that game, because he had the rapid fire cannon.
Yeah, he had just bought rapid fire cannon on the Twisted Fate.
Where was Kaiser to eat him up? Where's the team standing in front? Like that was the moment where you're like, okay, this is why we have Upset here. He's about to pop off, and the coordination just wasn't there. I think the Bo and Photon were backing away from Baron. It was just rough. It's just rough to see, because there's such a high ceiling. Another high ceiling team.
I mean,
that
the TF
goes away.
The TF was also just an extremely good pick in that game. You know, if you're going to be playing a no TP top laner, like TF is insanely good. Because you can basically just guaranteed intercept him before the Rumble gets to any kind of grouping scenario for the most part, or you could just play cross map forever. I mean, his build that game was Rod of Ages into Lichbane, which is, you know, that's a split pushing build. So I mean, I think that the TF was a very good pick and made it very, 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 very hard for Vitality to win that game, given the composition that they were fielding.
Dom, what do we do? What do we do here with this team? Do we try to grow through these growing pains, 2 different languages, which they have, you know, that's the path that they've been on, or do you bounce back from here?
Here's another example. Like the champions that Photon played in the group stage were Malphite, Olaf, Kled, and Jax in the 4 games they played in groups, right? And in spring playoffs, he played, like, the next week he played none of those champions. It's just weird. It's weird that, like, why would you shift your entire champion pool from week to week?
Because I saw Shanji do it.
but that's what I'm saying. Like, it feels like Liquid last year, where it's a castle built on sand. You know, it looks really cool that they have this versatility and that they have all these weapons, but at the end of the day, there's no underpinning foundation of how they play this game. So they try and play it differently every game with a massive, you know, language difference between the players. And here we are.
Yep. I don't know. It's very tough because I don't know what you can do at this point if you're Vitality. You can't really find many better players than who you have right now.
Yep.
Like who could you actually get that's an upgrade over any of these players? And I don't know what is the fundamental issue with why they react so negatively to losses. So it's so impossible to tell from the outside what you do from here. You probably just have to run it back. If anything, I mean, the only person you could change, I guess, would be Kaiser. That's the only one that you could maybe find an upgrade for. If some of the rumors are true right now, I mean, there's a bunch of fucking rumors in EU right now.
Yeah, we'll get to
about support shuffle, right? If there's a support shuffle and you could bring in potentially somebody like Trimby, for example, as a support, maybe then you'd do something like that. Outside of this, I don't know what you could do.
Bwipo for Photon. Would you risk that? Because we've seen what Photon's highs are, which are great, best top laner in the league, but no.
I mean, I don't. I mean, maybe. I'm shaking my head because this is just such a weird scenario because of what Dom said, that I feel very reluctant to offer solutions, because this is one of those things that you can only know by being inside the team.
Yeah,
I just can't know.
If I were to say like a roster change for Bwipo, I would say Bo for Bwipo would be something you could do, where Bwipo would just play jungle, because I feel like they just have no synergy with their jungler, and like Bwipo at least would probably be able to play around somebody. I mean, we saw him play with Upset, right? We've seen him be able to play around somebody like Upset. And I think that if you had maybe an extra voice in the team, because Bo looks lost in the games, maybe that could help. But I mean, it doesn't feel good because you still think that Bo is like a better player in terms of just like a jungler than Bwipo. But it's like, what are you going to win more with? And obviously, maybe they could go international with this roster as like a 3rd seed or something, but it wouldn't feel good.
All right. Well, only time will tell what Vitality end up doing with this roster. Very interesting. Which is leading us to a very interesting offseason as well.
Hold up. Let's talk about G2 just very quickly. I don't want to take a long time on this, but people are going to want to hear about it, because obviously this is, I mean, I loved your tweet, Dom, about, like, you know, what was funny is that, as you pointed out, this was the exact reverse of the situation that we thought might happen, which is that G2 would win and then, you know, send
the best team in the 4th best.
Yeah, the best team in the 4th best. But the old Uno reverse card happened, where it was not the way we think. Look, a lot of what happened with G2 was what we were afraid of, which is that when we talked about G2 previously, we said it doesn't necessarily feel good to send G2 internationally, because Broken Blade is probably not going to hold up internationally. Turns out he doesn't hold up domestically either, which is even more worrying in many ways. But the strengths of G2 are still the strengths of G2 as they always have been. Like, the core of this roster is very strong. We got to see over the last couple of weeks some, you know, the strengths of G2, which is like they have highly coordinated early games. They have a lot of set plays. They have a lot of tricks in the early game to get Yike ahead. They have some very weird compositions that they can build around a Belveth, for example, with Sejuani mid. They have unique picks that they use, and they use them in ways that other teams don't. And they have a very solid understanding about oftentimes how to play out bizarre team compositions and rely on the strength of Caps' champion pool to facilitate this. When they play around Hansama, they're good. Sometimes they just don't peel for him, which I find to be odd. And Broken Blade has been kind of a liability.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird, right? Because they had an unfortunate circumstance where they have a couple picks that will like almost auto win them the game if they get in the right situation. And then Yike just had his like worst Belveth game ever. In a game where he was like easily able to carry it if he played better. So then they went away from it, in the next game. So I don't know. It was very weird to watch like G2's collapse, but I think it can be boiled down to this, right? You gave Gragas 5 times to the team that plays the best Gragas in Europe. Just don't do that, and you probably can just win based off your strengths, and you don't have to end up in this situation. Like everyone was playing the game on super hard mode versus Mad Lions, and I just don't understand why. Like Niski is fucking, I mean, I know stats aren't the only thing that matters, but if you combine stats with how something looks, so eye test will tell you that Niski has been performing as the best Gragas mid in EU by far, right? Yep. And then you look at the stats and he's like never losing on the pick. He's fucking 11-1 or some shit on Gragas. Just ban his fucking Gragas. Everyone was doing it earlier in the split, and then for some reason they're like, you know what? Maybe we have to give him Gragas because we care so much about Rakan and Jace and all these other picks. Just ban the fucking Gragas when you play against Mad Lions. Like you have to do it. Just drop the ego, ban the Gragas, and G2 probably just wins.
Game 5 BDS, man. Like I think they did the draft at the analyst desk, and Yamato was just being like, all right, this one definitely has to be Gragas. Oh, okay. They didn't ban Gragas. Okay, they didn't first ban Gragas. Oh, they still let it through. Like it was just
I think it also comes down to like ego, right? Because theoretically their best player is Caps, right? Caps should be the best Western player. I mean, he's the Western GOAT. And they probably think like, oh, Gragas is limited. If we give a counter pick, like if we were going to put anyone in a tough situation in this game, let's put our best player in the tough situation because he's going to be the one that can actually handle it and deal with it. But it just ended up not working. I mean, Caps just had a pretty fucking bad series. I mean, I don't know. I don't think Caps has looked that good this entire year, to be honest. Like he's had good games and bad games, but he's had a lot of like weird games where he's dying a lot and just doesn't feel like he's reacting as well as you'd expect. Like, for example, the Casio game, he just never flashed. It's like, are you going to flash anything? Oh, we're just saving flash for MSI. So, I mean, I guess maybe they get out of play-ins with double flash on mid in like game number 1, but that's probably like the only advantage that they get from, this play from Caps. I mean, I think overall he was just not playing on form.
I think G2, if we had to be honest, if there was one team that was a 4th seed that we'd like to send, it's probably still G2 because their upside is still huge. I mean,
yeah, and it's also a 4 seed that doesn't feel that bad, right? Nah. Because, like, I mean, in the form that they were looking at, it feels like they would have shit on Vitality, right? So even though Vitality placed 3rd and G2 placed 4th, it didn't look like Vitality was beating anyone this week.
Yeah.
And G2 versus BDS, I'm not 100% confident that BDS would just win that either, provided that G2 was able to like have a similar draft strategy as Mad Lions did.
Well, it's also that I don't think that BDS really strikes at the Broken Blade weakness. And so if that matchup is neutral, you feel very good about G2 in general.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those are the 2 squads that didn't make it to the finals. That was our Galaxy Brain Club conversation. Not much left in this episode of Power Spike, but we do have a classic case of keep or kick. Probably one of the most one-sided ones ever. Let's just roll the thing now. Keep or kick. All right, chat. Let me know in comments below. Who would you take in this one? Keep or kick? Evil Geniuses, players, or management? Because earlier this week we got a cryptic tweet by Evil Geniuses saying that they're committed. Let me just get this 100% correct. They're committed to their League of Legends squad, so they're dumping everyone on the squad except Jojo Pune. Okay, Evil Geniuses takes great pride in our commitment to competitive performance and talent development. No one cares about their mentality. That's fine. After the outcome of our 2023 spring split season, we will be making roster changes that fully align with this commitment. We look forward to share updates as we look forward to building up our team and preparing for the summer split. Then news came out that almost all the players are gone, except Jojo Pune. We got a bunch of retweets. Vulcan is now signed with a Berlin-based talent agency.
And is in Europe, according to Niski's tweet as of this morning.
And is in Europe. Thanks, Niski.
Niski literally tweeted a picture of Vulcan across from the table.
Niski gets to do whatever the fuck he wants, man. He joins that few that have won in North America.
Man. They must be French, so they're out there having some croissant right now somewhere in Berlin.
So with that said, obviously this is a little bit of a troll keeper kick, but what the fuck is going on with the evil geniuses, man?
Well, I mean, first off, I just love this tweet because they take pride in our commitment to competitive performance and talent development. Well, anybody who knows Counter-Strike knows that their 3 Counter-Strike team talent development has resulted in their top teams like losing to completely amateur North American teams. And spoiler, guys, NACS is much worse than NA League of Legends, so it's even more embarrassing in many ways. And their talent development, by the way, was entirely engineered by Peter Dunn. Where's Peter Dunn? Oh, well, he's gone. So who has been engineering talent development? Because all of the talent that you guys...
What? Been doing it. Nicola Point has been doing it.
Oh, yeah, right. So their entire talent development system, they got rid of the guy who was doing that, and they haven't developed any new talent since that point in time. So why would that be a thing? And making roster changes that fully align with this commitment. What they mean is we are making roster changes that save us as much money as possible because our organization is crumbling both on the inside and the outside. We have a terrible Counter-Strike team. We lost our 10-year Monster sponsorship somehow. That is a total disaster. And we no longer have money for the League of Legends team, and probably we're not getting sponsors anytime in the future because of what our executive team that we refuse to fire has done. Seems like the fastest way to remedy this problem is to simply get rid of Nicola Point Jameson, so you excise the taint from your organization, and then therefore maybe people will be willing to invest money or sponsor you again.
And Nicola Point is the taint of the organization. That's what
right.
We've heard.
Yep.
Excellent.
I think it's the best description.
As someone that is pro content, I say kick the fucking players and keep the management, because they are providing such, I love to see things fucking crash and burn.
Also, I mean, you would say it's thematically appropriate to evil geniuses to kick the players and keep the management.
Yeah, just keep the geniuses that are evil. Perfect.
Live in evil.
I just want to see how far it collapses. I'm just there to watch everything burn. So I'm saying kick the players. Players are replaceable. They weren't even playing that fucking well anyway to begin with. Keep the management.
So yeah, the rumors are, guys, that JoJo might be staying, but that everything else is boom. All the other 4 players, Inspired, Someday, Vulcan, FBI.
It's just such a bummer. That's such a bummer, man. This just feels like a team that needed more time to gel with FBI, and Someday. You had Inspired, who came in and lit the league up, was MVP, who is probably gone now back to Europe. Also, I don't think this is a secret. They didn't like what the organization was doing. The players and the team structure didn't like what the organization was doing, is making them look bad and giving them all this bad press. So it just feels bad that now it's all gone. And now the biggest shame, I think, of all of this is JoJo's gonna be stuck here with a subpar roster. One of the best North American talents that we've had, we're talking about this talent pipeline, come on up, is now stuck. If he is still here, maybe there's going to be a good roster, and we'll fully judge once they get there. But that sucks. That super sucks. Who's going to take the mantle of best mid laner? It's Palafox again, who's worked hard. I get it, but JoJo had such a high ceiling so early, Dom, and we've talked about this before.
But don't worry, guys. EG still has Danny on the creator contract, so we can be hyped for all the money he's going to bring into the organization. He has streamed exactly 6 times in the last 30 days. So he's really contributing to an average viewer of 267. So it's going great. It's going great. That's where they're really going to get the dollars coming into EG.
Yeah.
This is
This
the biggest news and the most official news so far from an LCS offseason where it feels like things are moving. It feels like there's a lot of movement happening across the league, minus Cloud9 and Golden Guardians. But Revenge obviously stating that he's moving on from Immortals. Immortals bringing in Treats, which has been announced to play with Tactical, which seems like Tactical is not moving. Solo coming on in.
Signed to top lane, yeah.
I think this Immortals roster is better. Like that sounds better to me. The way that it functions will be better.
I think Revenge has always been kind of elo held.
No. I agree with that. I think Revenge is a better carry player and has been elo held than Solo. But I think they were trying to play in a bunch of different ways that wasn't around Revenge. So now Revenge can go to what would have been a cool spot in Evil Geniuses, maybe possibly 100 Thieves. That means Tenacity would be moving. Who knows? There's a lot of places for them to go, a lot of moving pieces.
I mean, I just think it makes no sense because you bring in Treats, right, to stabilize your like mid game. Like you bring in somebody who's more of a brain player that's going to like lead your team in a lot of these situations where the players are just confused because they're able to get into winning situations around objectives, but they just sucked at it because they didn't know what the fuck to do. So the whole point in
I mean, how many times did they have early leads that they threw? Like all the time.
All the
time. So that's the whole reason that you bring in Treats is so that it's easier for players like Revenge to shine. But then you bring in like a player top lane who's going to be generally losing lane, who might be okay in team fights, and he'll probably perform well in the team fights, but you're not going to have leads anymore. So I feel like you've lowered your ceiling significantly and like slightly improved your floor. I don't think it makes much sense.
But I think it allows them to play.
They may not have wanted to get rid of Revenge too. Revenge could have just blocked. They did. Okay.
They wanted to get rid of Revenge.
That's insane to me. I think Revenge is one of the most underrated players in LCS.
Yeah, they kicked Revenge.
That's
I'm excited.
And they kicked Revenge. The way they kicked Revenge too was like they did the fucking classic esports where they just like tease you and just tickle your balls the whole fucking offseason, and then just one day they just fucking punch you in them. Like it's just like, all right, okay, well now like you're fucking jobless. Good luck. Hopefully you can find a spot.
The ball
also,
punches.
Revenge is just from a personality perspective, in my opinion, very mature for a pro player. It is very difficult for me to imagine. Like a lot of pro players act weird because they don't have a lot of life experience or they're not kind of like well-rounded human beings. Like Revenge is actually not that. He's very stable. He's emotionally mature. I don't really see him as somebody who would be causing massive internal disruptions to a team.
Right. But think about that roster. That was just a young roster in general. Like, yeah, young-ish. I guess Tactical, do you count them as young? Do you count them as old? Both in
for LCS standards, they're a young roster. For like fucking Asian standards, they're super old.
No, I know, but what I mean is who is the rock that was stabilizing things? At the beginning of the split, it was going to be a Blaze Olive, but he stepped down and cited, that. But Lulu, surprisingly, when I did my interview with him, very mature. He's had a lot of life experience early on as a kid and
super long. Like this guy has been playing since. I mean, I remember playing versus. He was a pro player even in like season 9, I believe, when I like first went to Europe. So.
Yeah. So the surprising thing here is that you go from one of the youngest rosters, maybe emotionally / intellectually immature, to now one of the oldest rosters with Treats and Solo coming in, Balulu now inserted as your full-time thing. That, in my opinion, that allows Kenby to feel comfortable now. Kenby doesn't have to always be the facilitator. Treats can go ahead and take that mantle and do that and stabilize Tactical and Kenby. Like this roster, I just think it's going to do different things, which is good because they just sucked last year.
All this feels bad, though. I think that's the point is like a lot of these NA roster moves, just like EG blowing up their roster when this basically the core was a championship roster and like they were clearly underperforming, but part of that was due to them getting COVID late in the split, and also probably a lot of the drama that was circulating around EG gets to you mentally and affects the performance of the team for sure. And then you have Revenge, who is, quietly, I think one of the better tops in North America, who's been ELO held. Like, he gets dumped in favor of some of these other roster moves that, as Dom says, don't make sense. And it's kind of just you combine that with TSM being for sale, Dignitas being for sale, Immortals being for sale, CLG being sold, and I think people unreasonably being attached to that brand, which in my opinion, as I've stated, has been dead for years already. But it's hard. And then
no one was actually attached to that brand. Like, that's the thing.
That was some bullshit. That was
people are just virtue signaling. Like, you look at CLG's fucking tweets and stuff, they have no interaction. Like, no one's a fuking fan of that team, but then they just love to pretend they're like, oh yeah, I love CLG. No, it's like, you liked CLG in season 5 and then you didn't give a fuck about it afterwards.
Like us who are like, oh man, I have nice memories of CLG. It's like, motherfucker, you weren't buying a CLG jersey now. Don't lie. Like, that didn't happen.
I mean, just look at their interaction. Look at their interaction on, like, their tweets, on their social media, like the people watching the game, when the players stream. Like, they are not fans of that team still. Like, it's just such a virtue signal by people.
Yeah. So I just saying, like, all of these factors, whether they're real or not, and the declining viewership in LCS has led to a perception that things aren't going well. Let's put it that way. But also things, one of my favorite things, guys, is watching how exasperated Travis Gafford gets every time he makes one of these announcements, because he just looks more depressed and like dark circles under his eyes, and he looks more haggard every time because he knows if LCS goes away, then he's got nothing left. So what I would recommend to Travis is that you can go to www.thefreezepipe.com. You didn't see that coming. This is all a lead up to this, by the way.
Okay.
You can Travis, I know times are hard for you. Okay. So we have a discount for you. If you go to www.thefreezepipe.com and use code LFN at checkout, you can get 20% off your entire order. And, you don't have to rely on the hopium anymore, because cannabis is legal in California. So you could go to your local dispensary and purchase some cannabis and use it with your freeze pipe, which will then, if you freeze it for an hour in advance, cool the smoke by over 300 degrees and make it, unlike the LCS, not a harsh experience like you have right now. So again, this is a personalized advertisement for Travis. I know you're having a hard time, so please use our code. Revenues are down. You can save money this way. Have a great time, relax a little bit. So that was just entirely, all of that was a build up to an ad. Sorry, Dgon, I baited you.
I forgot too. I keep forgetting every week. I keep forgetting, and it's walking right into it. All right.
Also, that was 10x better than any of Travis's ad reads of all time. Just going to put that out there.
Okay. Jesus.
What? I don't even remember where we were because you got me so good. Where were we? Oh my God.
Yeah, we're good here on making sure that I can surprise you. It's a new challenge that I have for myself, is to make you laugh every episode with how I sneak these things.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked up the Energy social media.
Oh,
bro,
the Energy social media.
So which was CLG. Obviously, they just like renamed it and they took over the brand. When they got eliminated, their final tweet was like, "That's the end of the road. Like, thank you to all the fans that came out, supported us that split." And for any team that has like a big fan base, that's gonna be like 10,000 likes, something like that. Got 307 likes. I could tweet a period and get more likes than that. Like, that is like, I'm gonna do it right now. Like,
tweet a period right now. Do it.
It's just so sad that they've killed their own brand. It's just so hard, Like, I just don't.
By the way, Energy actually does have a pretty big fan base in Valorant. So I think that just objectively, from a brand perspective, Energy is way more successful at the current point in time than CLG is. And so, for a lot of reasons, like I said, the ownership I think is much better in Energy. They're actually very savvy when it comes to running. I'm not going to say profitable, because I'm not sure that's possible in esports right now, but maybe not losing anywhere near as much money. Like, they do a lot with a few staff. Their staff are very good. I know many of them. And they're just like a lean, mean machine. And I really like them as an org, and I really like Andy Miller as an owner. And I'm so happy that I'm so happy that FlyQuest got bought by the people they got bought by, and I'm so happy CLG got bought by the people they got bought by. So I'm not a doomer about this. I think that these are really good moves that are being made that will help the long term of the LCS.
Oh, 100%. I would love to see like orgs come in that have like some history outside of it and take a spot, like much more than CLG, just because it's what Monty always says. Ever since Madison Square Garden took over CLG, it's not CLG anymore. So they're like, even though people
it's the zombie of CLG.
Yeah, it looks like a CLG. I mean, the colors are still there, the fucking logo is still there, but it doesn't have the soul of CLG. So,
and like a zombie, it needed brains. So
yeah. All right, we've got half of what they did so far. In the 1 minute that you were talking about, we're at 155 likes. So let's see. Let's see.
Probably a lot of those are the 1,300 people that are watching the stream right now. But credit to you guys. Go like Dom's tweet.
If that's the whole point. Is that like that is what people actually. That's what people are like. That shows that people are actually like caring or interacting. They don't have the people interacting with them. So you'd much rather have like orgs that actually want to be an LCS, just as what it is.
I'm when we go start some of the staff and start to get to figure out how energy works, I'm going to ask them to tweet out just a period to see how many likes they get. They can even say, just want to see how many likes we get here, and then space period.
That's so unfair though. Like if you ask for likes and then you put a period, no, it has to be just the raw period.
All right, we'll raw period it later. Last thing that we're going to talk about.
I'm not going to take that out of context.
Anyway. Good. Last thing we're going to talk about. We touched on it earlier.
It's not a freeze pipe ad.
It's not a freeze
you
pipe.
are on your raw period. No, by using freeze pipe. Calm you down. Okay, never mind. All right.
My sponsors. My beautiful sponsors.
Yeah. I tried. This is why I don't do the ad reads on this show anymore. Well, I've never done that.
Please spam KEKW so that we'll just show the sponsors. Look, they thought it was funny. Vulcan in EU. So Vulcan signed with Prodigy in EU. Right? Is Prodigy? No. I want to make sure it's the right agency. Well, he signed with an agency in Europe, which is now Achieve Minds. It's Achieve Minds. Sorry, not Prodigy. Prodigy like has a bunch of the talent here in North America. Achieve Minds, Berlin-based, looking to probably be. Is he the first North American player to be going to Europe?
I mean, we've had Cody's son play in LFL.
No. That doesn't count. Sorry, Cody.
American players playing in LEC. There's never been an American player playing in LEC. Well,
is there a North American player? North American player. Yeah.
Yeah, there's never been a North American player playing in LEC.
All right, chat. We're crowdsourcing this one. Does Schernfire count? No, he's Osh.
Yeah, there have been Oceanic players. There have been Oceanic players.
There's Destiny played in.
Yep. Destiny was on with Xerxes on that roster.
And the cool part is we're not just sending like, middle of the road guy. Boom. We're sending probably the best support in North America. Maybe Sven, but like one of the best supports over the last 4 years. He said it himself. He's like, yeah, man. He got to go to Worlds with Clutch when they were Clutch, man. Like,
please, Vulcan, don't embarrass us all. Please just perform well and don't embarrass us all.
I guess it depends. It depends on what team he goes to.
So, I mean, the rumor right now is Heretics. I mean,
he's French Canadian, so he's basically half European already.
Yeah, true.
I mean, yeah. If he's French Canadian, sounds like he could slot into a French team with the hyper carry that maybe needs some unlocking. Oh, that's right. I'm just starting shit. Vulcan going to Europe. What does this mean?
He actually can't join Vitality unless they kick one of their imports. So unless it moves to 3 imports next year, which is the rumor.
Yeah. I mean, the rumor right now is Heretics, which would make a lot of sense because he just played under Peter Dunn, and then that's a team that will need support. And I feel like it would make a lot of sense. There's apparently here we can talk about all there are so many roster rumors. I'll just throw out the craziest one because people that know me know that I will fucking flame the shit out of this if this happens. If for some reason this roster move ends up happening where Sword Art joins Koi, I am going to be not fucking real. Pissed.
No,
that's all I'm saying. If Sword Art joins Koi, it's fucking doomed. Like, that's all I'll say.
That's not real.
That's not real.
I don't know the likelihood. I don't know if it's even more likely, but the fact that that's even like a rumor that's even being discussed is horrifying. That is horrifying right there.
I refuse to believe that's real. I refuse. I do hope Trimby gets on a different roster though. That'd be fun.
Well, that would be the situation, right? Like if Trimby goes to another roster, do you import Sword Art? You better not.
Did Reggie buy Koi?
And maybe he's cheaper.
He's trying to get his team over to LEC, so maybe that happens now.
Well, think about it. Like it's like buying a used car, right? If there was a car that was worth $6 million, and then you could get it. For I hear
Sword Art knows a lot about used cars.
True. Wait, was it a used car?
Or it was by the time he sold it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Anyway, continue your point. Sorry.
That was essentially my point, is that like, I hope that we don't go down the rabbit hole of importing completely washed players that have been performing terribly, because that's an NA thing. That's the NA special, you know? It's like, oh, Rich, you weren't even good enough to start on V5, which was like a fucking bottom tier team, NIP this split. You weren't even good enough to start on them. Like, oh yeah, let's just bring him into fucking Dignitas. That's the NA special. Don't start doing that, Europe. I want to still have hope for the region.
I mean, we've been doing it for years in sports. Just think of MLS. Oh, Beckham, come over. Frank Lampard, come over. Steven Gerrard, come over.
Ain't no one watched the MLS. That's
I'm just letting you know. Ain't no one watching LCS. That's what they say. That's what they say. I'm just saying. I'm giving you an analogy here. So
true.
You know, just like I guess U.S. soccer did. Here goes our best North American talent going off to Europe, playing the better leagues.
Monty, right. We've overtaken CLG with the period tweet.
God bless you, sir, for your experiment.
It took 9 minutes.
Have you ever considered, like, as Dgon like loves North America? Don't you think it's odd that Dom and I are the dudes who love the Asian League, while the actual Asian guy is the one who loves the North American League? What's going on with that?
Because I had to fight my whole life, Monty, to live the American dream. That's why. That's why. That was the gift from my parents to me, man. But I'm aware of it, which is why I can tell you Levi's the only one still left on Gigabyte Marines.
Well, Dgon's technical, his region would technically be PCS, so I think that LCS is a small upgrade. Yeah. So you know, makes sense.
The Genjia supremacy here. All right.
Okay.
That's the episode. We've hit through everything. I know you want Nostradamus and Dom to leak.
I already did. There's my fucking leaks.
The
rumors right now, these are all rumors. These are not like the rumors right now are that Vulcan is joining Heretics and that fucking Sword Art is considering Koi if there ends up being a support shuffle within the LEC and Trimmy moves on to a better team.
All right.
Yeah. Well, and also, we do have a scheduling announcement for you guys as well, if you stuck around. So there will be no Power Spike next week because there aren't any matches before MSI, and I think we've covered pretty much everything. And so because of the MSI schedule, we will be moving to after the matches conclude on Sunday, May 7th and Sunday, May 14th for live. And it will release on podcast platforms and YouTube the early in the morning US time / early afternoon European time on Monday, May 8th and Monday, May 15th. So just so you guys know, we are shifting. You know, we normally do it Mondays after LEC. We'll do it Sundays after MSI now.
Yeah. So, you know, make sure you have brunch with your family and then come on over. We'll be there to discuss all the action and how Licorice is just dominating in the league. Go ahead, Sadar. Time say that. The oldest roster, right? Because he's the oldest dude at MSI, or at the plans for sure. Someone tweeted that out. I think it was it Linda Crystallization or was it Ashley Kang? I'm not sure. But
how old is Suhi?
He's 28. He's 28.
Wow.
I considered him young.
No, Hui is 28. Stixay is 27, I think. So they have.
I mean, like when I was a player, I'm like, oh shit, he's young. But I guess when I was a player, he was he was 19.
Udapon is up there, correct, in age, but Hui is the oldest one.
Udapon just looks old, but he's actually not that old. He's like 26, isn't he?
That's old.
Yeah, he's 26. I mean,
Well, I'm 10 years older than that, so
Yeah, very old.
yeah, but you look younger than Utapon, which is the distinction here.
that's the key.
All right.
Yeah, I had a conversation. So I was over at I was over over at Impact's house like a couple weeks ago because I'm friends with another guy who lives there, and like Vikla was crashing there, and Vikla, met Vikla for the first time, and my son was there who's 3, and Papa Smithy was there too, and I talked to Papa. I was like, Papa, Vikla is closer in age to my son than I am to Vikla. and Papa was like, shut the fuck up. He's like, holy shit, we're old. I was like, yep, we're old. So my 3-year-old son is closer in age to Vikla than I am to Vikla now. That's how old I am.
That's where we're at. All right, Dom, you still doing E Masters? Is it over? E Masters?
No, I'm not doing it anymore. I rage quit it. It was too hard to watch for me.
All right.
I just couldn't get myself to be hyped for like tier 2 leagues. I'd still have it in me. I watch enough league as it is.
That's what I was gonna say. When you said you were doing
LCK,
I think you deserve a break, man. So take a break while it's the getting's good.
Yeah, we got a break for 9 days before MSI. That's our break.
All right. So break there. Where are people gonna find you, Monty?
Summoning Insight. And then we'll be back for shows for MSI. Very exciting times.
Yep. And then for me, streaming Plat solo queue, baby. That, and I guess just because we're homies here, I've been doing this fitness competition thing for like 4 months now. The final date is in 2 weeks. So like in 2 shows from now, that's the final date. I'm just gonna be eating during the show. Just letting you know. Eating pizza, eating ice cream, all the bad stuff. So
nice. Love it.
Those that have been following along and supporting, thank you for that. Just want to shout that one out. All right, y'all. That is all for this show. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms for Last Free Nation. And thanks to our friends over at FreeSpot. All right, guys. Take care. See ya.